Katherine Wolf and Alex Wolf. Thank you both so much for joining me on For Real. I'm so excited to have you guys here.
Oh, goodness, what a gift to be here, Kimberly. Al, how many years has Kimberly been a camper? Or Kimberly, do you know? I guess either one of you.
This will be your third summer, right?
It'll be third summer. And my only regret in life is that it's only the third summer. If only I had found you before. In fact, Katherine, I think the last time we talked on this podcast, I probably either on air or off air basically begged you to let me come to camp. So I happily blame you for being compassionate and letting us come.
Oh my gosh, you and your precious kids are a gift to the camp community. We're so thankful y'all come all the way from Iowa and volunteer. It's just beautiful.
You know what? It's become such a high point of our entire year. And really, we could talk about camp the whole darn time. In fact, camp makes an appearance in my new book. I couldn't handle it. I couldn't handle not talking about it. So I'll send you some copies. But anyway, I'm super excited to talk with you today because you two, first of all, are just dear friends. And also you have a new book coming out during a season of so much abundance. First, let's talk about the non-book abundance. You are opening a coffee shop in Atlanta, correct, Katherine? Is this coming up?
Yes, absolutely. Mend, MEND, Coffee and Goods will be opening, we think, if all goes according to plan, on April 15th. So by the time you're listening, listener, it's probably already a thing. Come by and see us off Roswell Road in Buckhead.
Unbelievable. And that's been a heartbeat for a long time. In fact, I think when we first met years ago, you all were already plotting. So Alex, can you tell me just a little bit about that space and your hope for it?
Absolutely. So you've talked a little bit about camp already. So Hope Heals Camp is something that we put into the world almost 8 years ago at this point. And it is pretty unique in the world. It is a camp retreat experience for entire family units. So this isn't just a kids camp or an adults camp or a camp for one type of disability. We have about 80 disabilities represented, people from all over the US, the UK, Europe, Canada, who come and gather together and just like are hurt but hopeful. And so we saw what camp was doing and what a powerful thing it was for these families who experience so much isolation with a life of disability to get connected to one another in what we call interability community. And we wanted to make that happen 365 days a year. And so that has turned into Mend Coffee and Goods, which is a universally accessible coffee shop in Atlanta, meaning every element of the design was considered for people that have all kinds of mobility needs, sensory needs, medical needs, toileting needs, and we will be employing adults with disabilities as well. So we call it our mission of belonging and belovedness. So we're taking it from 4 weeks in the summer in Nauvoo, Alabama to Buckhead, 365 days a year.
Wow.
Very exciting.
Oh my gosh.
And I should add, it is happening. It, of course, gave me chills and made me start crying yesterday that when Jay and I pulled up to the job fair before it even began, there was a line with several teenagers or young adults who were disabled on the outside with their aging parents with them. And one of the parents stood in the bushes and took an iPhone video of her son in a wheelchair going into his first interview he's ever had. And of course, it just made me cry because it was I just can't believe it's actually happening. Yep. The reality of young adults in particular just have our hearts so deeply because young adults with disabilities have aged out of school context, but they're usually many times unemployed. And they have such a shrinking peer group of largely paid caregivers and aging parents. And many times social circles are no longer willing to deal with it. It's just too hard. So they're very isolated, alienated in the world. And we long to create a space of belonging, but also of earning a livable wage, which is a
Mhm.
huge issue as well. So
Mm.
we saw even in the people applying to work yesterday, just a stunning influx of people in that category.
Yeah.
My reaction to all the things you do, including Hope Heals Camp and now Mend, I have a hamster in my head running constantly thinking, how can we scale? How can we scale? Because there is such, and I know you guys feel that too when we're at camp, this beautiful, you said you talk about Dr. Thompson, Kurt Thompson talking at camp about how it feels like we're practicing heaven there. That's really the right order of things. And 4 weeks is not enough. And one coffee shop is not enough. But boy, what a beautiful beginning. And you do
Oh,
it so beautifully. Yeah, just love to hear what you're doing and to have one teeny, 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 tiny front row seat every now and then. You two, I never said you are not sisters. You are sisters-in-law. So for those who don't know, Katherine is married to Jay. Jay is the older brother of Alex. So I just want everyone to have their family tree correct. Okay. Alex, I like one of my favorite stories about you actually is tangential. Is that a word? To you,
yeah.
because the first time we rolled up to camp, we drive from Des Moines, and it is a haul. We break it up. We stay one night in St. Louis. And so when we came the first day, my girls and I kind of stumbled out of the car. And who should greet us but your father, Pastor Jay Wolf? I hope he listens to this. I love your
Oh,
dad. He cracks me up. He acted like we knew each other. That was the first thing. Just thought we'd been friends for a really long time. You're
oh,
nodding because you know this is how he works. So he introduces himself. We've been friends for 20 years by the first 30 seconds. And he says, this week, my whole family is here at camp. And he starts naming the members of the family. And he gets to you, Alex. He's like, Alex is in charge of a lot of things here at camp. You know, she was a National Merit Scholar.
yeah, yeah.
That was his first thing. Now, you are ageless. I've told you, you look like you're a member of the Kennedys, but I don't think National Merit Scholar was last year. I feel like probably there's been a couple years since you were a junior in high school. And I so appreciate it that your dad is still trotting that baby out.
Oh,
He will continue to do so. I think I should talk to my therapist about this, but my whole life now has been trying to replace the National Merit accolade for him. So I'm working on it. We're about 13 years in yet to do it.
Anytime now, he'll let it go. He probably won't. I think my dad and your dad would get along because my dad for years would tell people that I was Phi Beta Kappa, which I want you to know means exactly nothing. Like they send you a brochure. Good job getting good grades. I don't have a pin. No one talks to me. You know, the magazine of that organization only talks about scholarly articles. But I was like, well, you know, you're an author, Phi Beta Kappa. So anyway, Jay and Randy would really get along.
We do need to get them together.
Oh my gosh, it would be dangerous. So you two, National Merit Scholar, very bright and gifted. Katherine Wolf, Alex Wolf, bright, funny.
Yeah, definitely not a National Merit Scholar
Me
here,
either.
just to clarify.
Me either. Two of these things are not like the other. I would love to ask you about co-writing. I want to talk about your book, but I have logistics questions first. Okay. These are rapid fire. You live in different cities, different states, right? Alex, you're in Birmingham.
Yes.
Katherine in Atlanta. You wrote a book together. This seems very difficult for my brain. So I'm going to give you really fast questions, really quick. I want to hear how this worked.
Okay,
First,
Alex.
Okay. Alex is good. Yeah, either one. You can alternate too if you want.
Totally.
Okay. Who is the one who keeps track of deadlines?
I guess we're both kind of do it. We're both time people. So
okay, good. You
we're
both like
good with
it.
deadlines.
That is very generous, Al. Yeah, right. You are. I'm not. Let's be real.
No,
This wonderful thing called Slack. It helps a lot.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally.
It does. Yeah, but Catherine's she's a calendar genius. I mean, it's crazy. So
okay,
she knows what's going on.
It's weird. It's not. Yeah, anything more that I don't have the luxury not to, sadly, is I have to know what's happening in months to come. So there is a weird calendar tick in my brain.
Okay. So it sounds like co-labor with that. Okay. Who loves the writing versus the editing? So who likes rough draft versus nuts and bolts perfection?
Alex likes it all. Catherine survives. Not a way to say it.
Catherine's great with the large concepts. She's the genius innovator, and I can
that's
put those
very
large
nice
concepts to paper. It's true.
That's a
So,
nice way
yes,
to say it.
that's a
Both,
good pair.
yes.
Who was the first one to wonder if writing a book was really such a great idea that it was initially?
Jay.
Jay?
Jay's like, this is not good for anybody. My marriage, my wife, my sister, my family, bars, and nobody. It's not good.
Yeah, let it be on the record that in 2020, after y'all's second book came out, we were on the phone one day and he said, "Never let me do this again."
Oh,
and so I
hilarious.
did remind him of it when we were signing this wonderful new book contract, and he said he didn't care. So, and we don't care. The message is worth the labor.
100%. I can't wait to talk about it. It's kind of like pregnancy, well, I mean, Alex, you haven't done this yet, but by the end you're like, wow, that was so hard. I don't know if I'll do that again. And then you do, because we forget and the human race continues.
For sure. No, that's actually very similar, strangely. It's euphoria after, and you're like, absolutely.
That was awesome.
Then you forget.
So funny. Okay, I would love to tell me I would love for you to tell me about the process. So who eats or drinks or snacks while writing? Do both of you? Alex, do you dabble?
I always go to the same coffee shop in my neighborhood, and now I've realized I have PTSD when I go back because I worked on the book for 5 months every morning.
What's the coffee shop?
Oh, it's called Cala in Mountain Brook, Alabama, and it is awesome.
We're back.
But yes, I drink coffee.
You coffee, wow.
Yeah, and I full on eat constantly because I can never really sit down for a big meal anymore because my swallow doesn't work well. And even worse as I age with all these bodily issues. So I'm always snacking on something. I'm definitely drinking coffee while I'm snacking. So yes, for sure, all.
Okay, fantastic. Silence while you write or ambient noise? Alex, it sounds like you like a little noise in a coffee shop.
Ambient noise, yeah. In my Spotify Wrapped, my top album wasn't like Taylor Swift. It was like a tonal, this like ambient noise albums.
Yeah, and part two. Yeah,
tonal
and
music,
I'm clearly not the National Merit Scholar, and Catherine has to have complete silence. To think about anything other than, I don't even know what. Just anything of substance, I need silence.
As do I. In fact, I put earplugs in my quiet house. That's how needy I am.
Yeah, hey, whatever it takes.
That's right. Last one. What strengths does the other author have that you needed and maybe didn't have on your own? Catherine, do you have something in mind that Alex has that you needed?
Something. It would be everything. It would be way too much to name one. Al is, there are no words. Brilliant, thoughtful, incredible with language, with just wrapping her mind around deep, important concepts and like being able to spell that out in words. Like I might know something really deeply in my heart and feel very passionately about it, but getting it succinctly on a page in a meaningful way is not my skill set. I'm better at talking than writing 1,000%. In fact, I've started just voice memoing any really important thoughts and hoping I can somehow salvage it into a cohesive little chunk to share, but it doesn't come easy to me. It does to Al, I think.
Beautiful. Alex, what would you say about Catherine?
Oh my gosh. Well, same. There's no way to sum up Katherine has lived this message, which it's one thing to be able to synthesize it, but Katherine has lived it. She's lived it faithfully. She has, the book is called Treasures in the Dark, and Katherine's done the hard work of extracting all the treasures herself over 16 years now. And she's generously shared it with me first so that we can share it with a wider audience. And also, as deeply as I care about our readers and our campers, Katherine, like her capacity for compassion, if you just even just one-on-one in meetings, I mean, Katherine, her heart beats for the people that this book was written for.
Yeah.
And that is like not something you can learn or develop. That is just like a gifting from God, is her capacity for compassion. And it hasn't shrunk over her time interacting with hurting people. It's grown. And so I just hope I can like steal some of that from her.
Well, I would think you have it out too, or you wouldn't be the director of camp. Hello.
Oh yeah. Well, absolutely. And when you live, you are living an experience that I can feel so much empathy for. But at this point in my life, I do not live with disabilities, but you do. So you just have this extra layer of no inside knowledge.
It is weird. I was thinking that yesterday, like, why am I so moved by this moment of the families coming to apply for the job fair? And I'm like, I think it's God given that I'm so just very taken by into that community that I'm just very more than I should be. It's kind of a problem, like deeply compassionate, but maybe overly invested. But you know, you can't hit a 10 out of 10. So whatever. I'll talk
15
to
out of 10.
I'll talk to my therapist about it. Oh well.
We all have our therapists on speed dial for so many things.
Seriously.
Katherine, I'd love for you to tell me about the timing and the title of this book. Alex mentioned it's called Treasures in the Dark. And we even talked about this at camp last year a little bit, but can you tell me about that?
Oh my gosh, yes. The notion of treasures in the dark is based on the passage of Isaiah 45:3, where God says, I will give you hidden treasure in the darkness, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am God, the God of Israel, the God who summons you by name. And my thinking for many years, actually, funnily enough, like, I mean, I can remember saying something along these lines in like literally when John was born around 2015, that there are these strange gifts in darkness, these treasures that are only available when you're in deep darkness. And if you're there, if you have to be in the darkness, which all of us do at different points in our life, you might as well get the treasure and not just get it, treasure it forever, cherish it, champion it, let it become part of who you are and carry it through your whole life. Because the reality is you never move on from what you've been through. That's so stupid. You honestly move forward from it. You can, in fact, move forward, not move on. But in moving forward, you might as well fill your backpack with some really powerful tools to cope in this world. So Treasures in the Dark is basically, we don't use the word devotional, Kim. We say reflection guide because people have got baggage and church hurt. You get it, you write about it. And, you know, scripture's been weaponized, and even well-meaning family and friends have said crushing things about, well, read this devotional and like, that's going to make life better. Yeah, right. So we have a reflection guide where you can choose your own adventure, so to speak. There is reflections on for the hurting heart, for the healing, for the hoping, and 30 entries of each. And basically, we want people to read these as they apply in their story. The byline of the book is, it's Treasures in the Dark. What's the first part, Al? Hysterical.
Treasures in the Dark, 90 reflections on finding right Bright hope hidden in the hurting.
Hidden in the hurting. Exactly. Sorry. I was like, what's the first word? 90. No wonder it left me.
That's a long subtitle.
Yeah, it's a beautiful subtitle because that's it. There's bright hope available in our deep hurting, in our wounding. There's this possibility for something bright to come out of it, even though, that can be very difficult early on. And we never, ever want to explode sentiments about like treasures in the darkness. You're going to get those because that's so stupid. The reality is it is horribly painful to go through whatever nightmare you're walking through. I acquired this disability at 26. And so both beautifully and very unfortunately in some ways, I know what it's like to not live this life very well. So there's been a lot of pain associated with like, it didn't used to be this way. And I can see a picture, from when I was 17 years old and I shouldn't care anymore. And yet it stings, oh gosh. Or when my first baby was born, like there were no problems and carried him out of the hospital and there's pain, but there's also a sense of bright hope within this hurting that sustains. And that's just a powerful truth for people to cling on to. I've said enough.
You've not said enough. And I hope
Sorry,
you also...
I'm talking so much.
No, please never apologize for that. No, I want to hear every single word. I want to get back in a minute to some of the things you just said, Katherine. But Alex, turning to you, as you were putting together this book with Katherine, at the end of all of these reflections, and by the way, they are beautifully written. They're beautifully written. I will give this book for the rest of my life. Listen, I am a word nerd, and I will give this book for the rest of my... It is a beautiful book, and it is a beautiful book for people right at the center of the maelstrom and every ripple outward. It is just such a needed book. That's my heart's cry. I would like to ask you, at the end of every single reflection, you have this phrase, if it's true for me, could it be true for you too? And I wonder about, first of all, the repetition of that is really lovely because as you get into the book over and over, you aren't able to say, well, that was Katherine's story, right? I'm not there, right? It kind of forces the reader to think, well, maybe this is mine too. So can you talk to me about that particular phrase? Why did you land there for kind of the cadence and the rhythm of the book?
Such a great question. Katherine often says, what is most personal is most universal. And that has, I think, been one reason that her story has resonated with millions of people. And really, Katherine survived like a 1 in a million, honestly, more than kind of like a 1 in a billion medical event. So she really shouldn't be relatable in any way.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
Somehow the pattern we've seen over the 15 years that you've been sharing your story is this is striking people who have suffered so many kinds of losses and unmet expectations. So we wanted that to be an experience in the book. The book is 90 vignettes from Katherine's life. So it is very specific to her, but each one always circles back around and kind of sticks a hand out to the audience, to the reader, and says, hey, this can be your story too. The specifics may be different, but you can maybe find the same treasure that I found on your path through the darkness. And so originally the entries were actually written like a benediction, like they ended with so, like, may it be so, or some type of almost like an ending of a prayer. And that was beautiful, but it was very stiff and formal a little bit. Like it sounded, it wasn't quite the tone we were going for. So our wonderful editor encouraged us to say, like, maybe you could ask a question or interact with the reader here. And that's what we did. And it ended up being the perfect change to make.
I love it. I think it's brilliant. I think oftentimes books with either reflections or devotionals or vignettes, if I have a little bit of an allergy to canned questions. So in other
Yeah.
words, you can feel like the author was like, well, I really said what I wanted to say, and now I have to say like some like prompt for you. I actually love the repetitive nature of that was
Oh,
a
good.
constant throughout. I think it's beautiful. That's just good job, editor, and good job, authors. Katherine, I want to circle back to something that you were just talking about. You say the first step in healing, this is in the book, the first step in healing is to allow my story to break my own heart. And you mentioned that just a little bit ago. There's one of the things I love about you too, and Katherine, how you move through the world is that there is not one iota of you rushing people through suffering. I think that's a huge part of why the millions of people who love you love how you live, because you are not in a hurry to put some skanky bow on something that is horrible, right? And
I love that. Yeah.
I feel like we have an impulse of that, both in maybe in the church and also just Americans. I was just in Europe. They don't seem to be too worried about bows. Right? I don't know.
Right.
Just in general, culturally, I think we love to be like, but it's going to be okay. Cue the fireworks. And you don't do that. And I love that
Right.
about you.
Oh,
And you
for
say in the
sure.
book, if we do that, we actually miss out on something really important. So can you talk to me about what we miss when we try to hurry that train down the tracks?
Oh gosh, absolutely. I am a huge advocate for this because the reality is, if you try to bypass the deep grief and recognition of what's happened, you're not going to get past it.
Right.
You know, there's a sense like, unless you allow your circumstances to break your heart and bewilder you, you can never possibly truly accept your circumstances because many, many times they are shocking
Yeah.
to you more than anyone else. And
Right.
I definitely understand in a very unique way because I am most definitely wired to try to put a bow on every a skanky bow on everything and just definitely want to make it okay for people. And I love to fill awkward silence with platitudes and weird sentiments. That's just, I'm really still very much at 42 years old in process of unlearning so many things. And one of the many things I'm dramatically unlearning is that I want to make it okay for everyone else at all times. Like whatever it is, I have got the perfect sentiment to make it all better. And that's so ludicrous. No, we don't.
Right.
Let's stop trying to fix so much. So I started a group called a suffering club. It may catch on, it may not, because the title's really not that cool. But we sit around and sip coffee and don't make it okay. We just sit in the sadness and awkwardness and basically commiserate with each other and listen again and again, maybe to the same story, and be truly empathetic listeners who don't want to make it okay. The whole point is to not. The whole point is to listen deeply. And what we are counting on is that the Holy Spirit is doing the work of moving. And honestly, it's extremely electrifying to not have people fix it, to share what's honestly going on and let a group of people sit with, I'm getting chills as I say it, just sit in the heart with you and have them show you with their body and their leaned in posture and their eye contact, we're not leaving, we're not scared, which is, of course, our deepest human fear, is that if we really knew how bad it was, if we really knew what someone was like, we would leave. And that's our deep fear, is that they're going to leave because they know too much. But instead, to practice really staying is so, so important. But that wasn't your question. I apologize.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Oh,
it
it
is.
is.
It absolutely is. Because I think
Oh.
what you're talking about, what we miss. And you mentioned to have a group of, first of all, the Suffering Club is, I think I say stay with the name and make a t-shirt.
Oh.
You guys make
I
the
do
best merch
too.
anyway. You should make a t-shirt. My grandmother, when she was a high school teacher, I don't know if you can get away with this anymore, but she was a public high school teacher in a teeny tiny town in Iowa. And one of her assignments for her honors writing classes was to read and dissect or analyze the book of Job in the Bible. And
Wow.
because it's a piece of ancient literature and the oldest one, we think, in scripture. And when you're talking about the club, Katherine, it makes me think of how those friends really that were chatting up Job and trying to help him know where he went wrong. Talk about skanky bobes. I mean, they did sit with him, but
Yeah.
after a certain point, they really had a lot of advice. And you say, we don't want to fix it. I think it might also be we cannot. That's the problem. That's the divide.
Right. Yeah.
When we try to move into, okay, well, here's what you should do or what you could do, that's actually not helpful because it's not true. We can't,
Right.
no one can fix. So that you allow the Holy Spirit to do any sort of knitting together is so much wiser. I'm not sure where we got off on that, but it does comfort me that even thousands of years ago, even Job's friends were like, here, I've got a 5-step plan. Step aside, Job. And it didn't work then either. So
Right. And it didn't work then either. 100%.
you two and your family have built this beautiful countercultural, you call it a joy rebellion. And when I think of you two and your sisters, Alex and Jay, and your boys, Katherine, I just think of this like remarkable set of warriors, the best kind, fierce and ferocious and also tender. I mean, honestly, I just love watching this as a bystander and a friend, how you move. And I have noticed, Katherine, you're even wearing this word right now. Hope is the spot where you have hung your hat.
Woohoo. Yeah.
And hope is a big and loaded word.
Right.
So
Very true.
I've been thinking a lot about a word that's also loaded. It's grace. It's when we have these old kind of well-used hashtag words, I call them. You know, when you find it on a pillow at TJ Maxx, I think that's
Of
always the
course.
time when you're like, you know what, we need to brush the dust off and think
Right.
about
Yeah,
what does this word
totally.
really mean, right? So I would love for you two both to talk about, you talk in the book about how hope is something we practice, not just something we believe. That seems both countercultural, right? And also, I would love to know what that looks like on a day. So for Katherine, you at the nucleus of the suffering, what does that look like? And then also, Alex, you're in a first ripple, right? We've got a lot of people listening who are in the depth right now. And we also have a lot of people listening who are aching with their people in the depths. So what does hope look like for both of you in those positions? Alex, do you want to start?
Oh my goodness, sure. So I think hope can be esoteric or ethereal, insubstantial, but we have been able to wrap these words around it over the last few years that hope is a future promise lived out in the present. And that's the thing about being friends with Jesus, is that a lot of the choices you make and the things you believe, they're here, but not yet. They're now, but not yet.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a little bit of both. So for me, I mean, in so many ways, my life is sort of charmed, like in this phase. And I'm highly aware that could change in a heartbeat. So sometimes there's a guilt that you carry that I don't feel like I need hope that much because for whatever mysterious reason in this season, I've been given everything I could ever need. But I have the privilege of working for and with and alongside of a lot of people whose lives are not turning out in any way they could have imagined, specifically people with disabilities, and who are carrying so many other hard things. Like disability isn't even the defining point of suffering for a lot of these people. That's just,
of course, yes,
one element of it. So it's almost, for me, hope is more about reconciling how these things could be happening to these dear people, and how I make sense of that, while also feeling very sure that there is a God who is good and who loves them. And so I think what I spend a lot of time dwelling on is just that God has promised restoration. And this is like end game restoration, right? And I think that means at the end of this big story of the universe, of humanity, that it's going to end in wholeness. And that wholeness is not going to be anything we expected, but it's been promised to us. And I'm having to release the fact that I won't ever know how we're going to get there. And I probably will never know what it's going to look like till we're all there partaking together. So yeah, I spend a lot of time thinking about that. But also I do think that we can expect some specific and individual wholeness and restoration and healing as well. And so I think for me, practicing hope is a lot about opening your hands to what healing might look like in the big picture and in your life. And for Katherine, I mean, there were many years, as an example, that it was kind of like, oh yeah, she's going to get better, air quotes. She's going to walk again. She's going to drive again. She's going to be able to mother in a typical way, yada, yada, yada. And it's just so funny over the last 15 years, realizing like the healing has all been in changing the definitions of what healing is. The healing hasn't been about a body getting better in the way we wanted it to. And so that is a tangential experience, to bring back the word. We don't know if it's a real word or not.
Yeah.
But that has also, played out in my life in much less visible and spectacular ways. But redefining our expectations of what healing can look like really does foster a lot of hope in the day-to-day for me, for myself, and on behalf of the people that I love and the people that I'm working alongside.
Beautiful. Katherine, what would you say about how you define hope?
Well, I'm reminded of the Philip Yancey quote that hope is believing in advance what will only make sense in reverse. And I love that notion so much. I heard him speak years ago on it and was blown away that only in reverse does it ever make sense. But very practically, the practice of hope, living into hope, is almost like at this stage, which 16 years later, I've so rewired my brain to see the hope to come that it's hard to not live there. It's really hard to relate, honestly, to people who cannot get out of feeling really just permanently stuck. I struggle with having empathy for people who feel like their life is over by whatever suffering they've had, because I'm so bought so hard into practically practicing hope. The practice of hope has carried me. When the feeling of hope failed me, quote from the book, the habit of hope carried me when the feeling of hope failed me, maybe. Or the practice or habit, one of those. But this idea of hope being something I'm so certain of and sure of to come in the story, and also God himself present in the story as part of the hope, has just changed my brain, I think. And I've had a lot of opportunity, including where we met, Kimberly, in Des Moines, Iowa, to share and to share about the hope which I believe. And I think in doing so much sharing to so many empathetic listeners, it has changed the neural pathways in my brain.
Oh, wow.
Where honestly, all I can feel is hopeful about the future. And it's almost hard not to now, which is probably the problem you most want, is err on the side of deep hope, which I feel.
So if there is someone listening, and I bet there is, who does feel stuck and who does feel nope, I think we're all done here. Scene. When you talk about the practice and the habit, We all have practices. We all have habits, some of them chosen, some of them default. What does that look like for you? What do you mean? Is this just the way you're thinking? Is it what you're filling your brain with? Is it conversation? Is it something physical? Can you just put some flesh and bones on that?
Oh, totally. I feel bad talking again, Alex. You feel free to weigh in too, but
Yeah.
I'm delighted to if you want.
I
So-
can say a few
Okay.
things that are
Mhm.
coming to my mind, and you can think on it for a minute.
Perfect. Okay.
Few things that we do in our Wolf family, Hope Heals family.
Mhm.
Ebenezer's are a really big
Mm.
thing in our homes. Catherine
Yep.
and Jay are so good about these physical reminders. They've taken a cue from when the Israelites were traveling through the wilderness, and when they would win a big victory or a big battle, or when God would really show up for them, they'd build these monuments almost, or, you know, whatever they had with them, piles of stones, pillars of stone, and say, this was a time and place God showed up for us.
Yep.
Let's never forget it. And so such a good thing to do is just to collect little things. Those can be photographs. They can be, you know, whatever, scraps of paper or letters or notes that mean something. It could be artwork, tattoos, whatever. Fill your home, fill your surroundings with reminders of God showed up at that time for me. And so I can never claim that he hasn't showed up for me before. And this thing reminds me why. Another thing we do a lot of that's a practice is re-narration. And so I think, Catherine, you even say sometimes at night when you lay your head down at night, you go back over your day, and there's kind of your first pass, which is like, today was okay. Some things, this was annoying, this went wrong, this didn't go according to plan, my kids were crazy, whatever. Or you can re-narrate and say, I have kids that made my house loud and they made my house messy and they didn't let me get a lot of work done, but I have two kids that I was never promised. Wait, I live in a house that gets messy. Like, I have a house that I can feel safe in and close the door on and stay warm. I'm laying beside a spouse that is for me and with me and takes care of me. I ate dinner tonight. You know, you can go back through your day or your life and tell the truest story of what's really happening. And that story doesn't have to be a fairy tale. That's not a true story either. But the truest story also isn't doom and gloom, the worst version of everything. So I really like Ebenezer's and re-narration are two hope practices.
Great. So fantastic and practical. And I love it. Catherine, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, yes. The second one was what my mind immediately meant to, but specifically for my kids. I very much feel a nearly inappropriate, I well admit it, and mania focus on like, how is mom's disability affecting their lives? And you know, there's been some real sad stories. Maybe I will, maybe I'll get Phil Al's here and she'll spread the news of just some pretty scarring encounters from well-meaning people about how this is affecting my children through the years.
Goodness.
And I really took that to heart probably, and pretty adamantly am combating the negative effects of a disabled mother to my children by a whole lot of narration about God's goodness within the story, and very much like hammering it home, probably annoyingly to my 16-year-old, just all the ways God is always showing up in our lives and taking us exactly where we're supposed to go, and how he's on the move. Don't miss it, basically. We do a lot of small things with the kids to instill just a real sense of gratitude, but also in the presence of God, that he's not some absent, you know, dude in the sky, that he's at work in our lives every day, and that this is actually a huge blessing. One example that I love to share is it could be a real sadness that my husband has to drive all carpool. It's almost become this bizarre status symbol to drive carpool. It's so weird. Like, at least in Buckhead, it's freaky. Like, driving your kids to school is really cool, and looking yeah, having your coffee and doing the drive. I don't know, weird.
Atlanta,
And
maybe.
yeah, bizarre. So I have to sit in the back seat because of my neck condition, and I ride with him every time. I definitely could stay at home in bed, but oh please, I'm not missing it. So I ride in the car in the back seat, and I get to tell my children, look around. Do you see anybody else's car, a single kid pulling into school whose parents are both with them?
Yeah.
Not one. You
Mm-mm.
guys are so special. Your parents are both taking you to school every single day. If it were not for mommy's stroke, this would not be. We would not both be driving you to school every day. And that's how they're kind of seeing the world. Oh wow, like this is cool. Like
Yeah.
my family's different and it's a good thing.
Mm.
And I think that's powerful re-narration of all of our stories.
Mm. I will tell you and our listeners that one of the enduring images of your children for me, Katherine, is last summer when we did a very fun outside Christmas party. And let's just tell you right now, there is not one bit of my Midwestern body that was fooled into thinking that 180 degrees and 100,000% humidity
Yeah.
was Christmas-like. Okay.
Right.
So we drank the Kool-Aid and decided it was Christmassy. But
right. Totally.
James had on I believe it was a Santa or elf costume, probably Santa.
Yeah, totally.
Again, the temperature is a factor here. I have the most wonderful video, I should send it to you, of him absolutely doused in sweat and throwing fake snowballs, running around in a wide arc, fully having so much fun and helping everyone in that space have fun. So I'm going to tell you the reframing or the re-narration is absolutely, I don't even think it's a for him. I think it's the OG. I think it's the original narration of what beautiful things are around every single corner, including in the heat and in a Santa costume. There's no hesitation for him to join in.
Oh,
so what you are doing is working. What you're doing is working and it's beautiful.
Just a quick caveat to that. Yes, and amen. May it be so. But just like all 16-year-old boys,
oh, yes.
I mean, come on. He's got loads of weird stuff.
Well, I'm sure that costume stank. So I know it's not perfect.
Exactly. Yes.
Totally. No, we're all limping towards what we want to be, including all the teenagers in our house.
For sure.
Women, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a total joy. I told you before we turned on the mics that this for the week has been the little spot of sunshine on my calendar that I just could not wait to see you guys face to face again and to chat about your beautiful new book, Treasures in the Dark. I hope every single person listening, just stop it, pause it right now, go over to your favorite bookseller and order that thing. It will change your family, your heart, the way you look for and mind for the things that matter. So Alex and Katherine, thank you so much for joining me. You are gifts to me.
Oh, we love you, Kim.
We love you. And we cannot wait to read your book coming up.
No kidding.
What I'm really, really excited about this
We will
spring.
all meet up at camp and have some cool, refreshing water and chat about the post-battle report. Love you guys.
Absolutely. We love you. See ya.